Let me start by noting that we have repeatedly said, our ranking member on the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Murray, has said that we are more than willing to fund TSA, more than willing to fund the Coast Guard, more than willing to fund FEMA, and that it is the administration that is holding those agencies hostage in order to extract additional funding for ICE and CBP. That is our quite clearly stated position, and I just wanted to recognize that now. Ms. Noem.
The hearing took a sharp turn when Senator Sheldon Whitehouse began recounting an incident that he said revealed troubling conduct by federal officers operating in Rhode Island. According to the senator, the situation unfolded inside a state courthouse where federal immigration enforcement agents allegedly ignored a standing agreement with court officials not to carry out operations inside the building. Whitehouse described how agents entered the courthouse in plain clothes and wearing masks, raising immediate questions about whether they were aware of, or simply chose to disregard, the agreement with the court. Either possibility, he argued, pointed to a breakdown in professionalism. The senator also noted that courthouse rules prohibit photographing individuals inside the building, yet agents were reportedly taking photos of people present. The situation escalated when officers began pursuing someone they believed to be a suspect. But according to Whitehouse, the individual they targeted was not the person they were looking for at all. Instead, it was a high school intern who happened to be inside the courthouse. The suspect, he said, was supposedly a man in his 30s, a stark difference from the teenage student the agents approached. What followed, the senator suggested, illustrated how quickly mistakes can spiral when coordination fails. A state judge reportedly stepped in and escorted the intern out of the courthouse in an effort to defuse the situation and return the student safely to school. But the encounter didn't end there. Whitehouse claimed the agents failed to recognize the judge and continued following him outside the courthouse. For the senator, the episode represented more than just an embarrassing mistake. It raised serious concerns about whether federal enforcement operations were being conducted with the professionalism and situational awareness expected in sensitive environments like courthouses.
I want to walk you through an incident that took place in Rhode Island. We have a courthouse in Rhode Island, our Superior Court. The court had an agreement with your organization not to conduct operations in that courthouse. Despite that agreement, your officers went in to conduct operations in that courthouse. They went in plain clothes and masked, so maybe they were aware of the agreement, maybe they weren't. Either way, it was unprofessional not to honor the agreement with the court. There is also a court rule against photographing people in the courthouse. They were photographing people in the courthouse. They either didn't know or didn't care about that court rule. Either way, it was unprofessional. They were pursuing an intern and taking photos of this young intern who was not the person supposedly sought. The intern was in high school. The person sought was in his 30s. It shouldn't be too hard to tell the difference. They couldn't. It was unprofessional. A state judge escorted the intern out to his car to take him back to high school. The agents didn't recognize the judge. They operate against the agreement in a courtroom and don't bother to know who the judges are. Again, unprofessional. They followed the judge out to his parked car, which was parked in a spot reserved for judges. Whether or not they already knew he was a judge, it does not take much in terms of powers of deduction to understand that the person getting into a car in a parking spot reserved for judges is probably a judge. Again, unprofessional. Then they threatened to smash his windows and drag him from the car a judge with a high school intern in the car who's not the guy they're looking for. That kind of escalation seems unprofessional and irresponsible. Then they held the kid for half an hour in another vehicle while they figured out that, in fact, the high school kid was not the 30-plus-year-old person that they were supposedly looking for. Nobody was hurt, but there was nothing professional about that entire exchange. And I would ask you to send a signal down to your folks to stop that kind of dangerous and unprofessional nonsense, particularly in our courthouses. Let me ask you, why don't you deconflict with local enforcement when you operate?
Our officers do. We welcome cooperation from local law enforcement and want them at the state level, at the local level, to cooperate with us so that we can continue to conduct our federal operations with the safety of the cooperation that comes from those types of agreements.
Deconflicting and cooperating are two different things. They can overlap, but they are two different things. You deconflict when you plan an operation in another law enforcement agency's jurisdiction, like here, the court sheriffs, and let them know what you're going to do. This all could have been headed off if you'd spoken to if your people had spoken to the sheriffs first and said, we're concerned about this guy. Oh no, he's an intern, he's in high school. None of this was necessary if they had bothered to deconflict. So please, send the message down to your people that there's a reason that deconflicting is standard law enforcement practice for, among other things, officer safety. Will you do that?
Yes, sir, but I will tell you that our law enforcement are being doxxed at unprecedented levels. So at times we've run into situations in sanctuary cities or in sanctuary states where notifying that local law enforcement on some of these operations has doxxed them and their families and leaked a law enforcement operation, which puts...
Whitehouse argued that the entire confrontation might have been prevented through a well-known law enforcement practice called deconfliction, the process by which agencies notify local authorities before conducting operations in their jurisdiction. According to him, this type of coordination allows local officials to clarify details, avoid misunderstandings, and ensure that the right individuals are being targeted. In the Rhode Island case, he suggested, a simple conversation with local law enforcement could have confirmed that the individual agents were pursuing was merely a high school intern. That communication alone, the senator argued, could have prevented the escalation that followed. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem acknowledged the importance of cooperation but framed the issue very differently. She said federal officers do want to work with state and local law enforcement whenever possible. However, she argued that the reality on the ground has become more complicated. According to Noem, officers involved in immigration enforcement have increasingly faced harassment, threats, and exposure of their personal information, a practice commonly referred to as doxing. She suggested that in some cases, notifying local authorities about upcoming operations has led to leaks that place officers and their families in danger. From her perspective, the challenge lies in balancing coordination with operational security. While she indicated she would reinforce the importance of communication with her department's personnel, she also warned that protecting officers from retaliation has become a major concern for federal agencies. The exchange revealed a deeper tension between lawmakers and federal officials: how to maintain effective enforcement operations while also respecting local jurisdictions and minimizing risks to both officers and civilians. The hearing moved into even more contentious territory toward the end when Senator Whitehouse raised a completely different issue: allegations surrounding a halted civil rights investigation connected to the Minnesota shootings. Whitehouse asked Secretary Noem directly whether she had played a role in stopping that investigation. The question appeared to catch the secretary off guard. She responded that she did not know what the senator was referring to and insisted that she had not stopped any investigations. The senator then pressed further, shifting the focus to a separate legal matter involving deportations that were allegedly carried out in violation of a federal court order involving Venezuelan migrants. Whitehouse asked whether Noem would testify truthfully if called to testify in federal court during contempt proceedings related to that case. Noem responded cautiously, indicating that she believed the senator was referencing a matter where she is subject to a gag order. Because of those legal restrictions, she suggested she could not provide further detail in that setting. The moment left several questions hanging in the air and underscored the increasingly adversarial relationship between congressional oversight committees and federal agencies. For lawmakers like Whitehouse, hearings like this are an opportunity to demand answers and highlight potential misconduct. For agency officials, they often become a careful balancing act between transparency, legal constraints, and defending the actions of the departments they lead. In Washington, exchanges like this rarely end the debate. Instead, they often become the beginning of deeper investigations, and sometimes even larger political battles, over the limits of federal authority and accountability.